Hello and welcome. I'm Bob Jimenez, your host for Islam in Contemporary Life. Conversations with Professor Dr. Fathi Osman. The triple interdependent pillars of life. In the religion of Islam, they are seen as the individual, the family, and society, which, when integrated together and work well, create a healthy individual, a healthy society, and it pleases God. Well, in modern times, and particularly here in the United States, the pillars of living often support material wealth, self-serving interest. Families, American families that were once havens of nourishment and safety, are now fragmented. What does the religion of Islam say about all this? What are some of its answers? Well, for the next hour, we'll be talking about all of this with Professor Dr. Fathi Osman. He is a doctor of philosophy, a lecturer, an author, and considered one of the world's foremost scholars on Islam. Professor, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, what is the Muslim's definition of family? Who's in it? How is it structured?
Family in Islam, it is not only the nucleus family, that means the parents and their children. It is the extended family, that every relative, the cousins, the nephews, the nieces, they are uncles, aunts, they are included in the extended family. There is a sort of relationship. But this does not mean that the nucleus family should not have some concentration or some special care, because this is the direct responsibility of the spouses towards one another and as parents towards their children.
It is important.
It is very essential that because without the family and without the care of the parents in raising up their children and rearing their children, any society cannot achieve its ideals or its teachings, whatever the laws and the constitution and the philosophies may be.
What's the basis of the relationship of a Muslim family?
The basis is the biological basis, but in addition to this, the spiritual basis and the spiritual responsibility that the spouses first, starting with the spouses. Every spouse has a certain responsibilities toward the other. It is not just the biological relation or the psychological comfort. In addition to this, everybody is responsible for the other in front of God. And so they have to make their relationship and their life very, very happy as possible, spiritually, intellectually, physically, all the angles of happy life. And this should be also applied to the children in raising up them, raising all the principles and the ideals of Islam, freedom, equality, respect of the other, through the teachings of Islam, and the mutual relations, care and love and the kindness from the parents towards the children, and the love and respect from the children towards the parents.
Well, individuals make up families, families make up societies. Let's go back to the individual. Is the individual ranked equally with the importance of family in the Muslim
religion? It is the basis, and I think that without raising up the individual and nurturing the virtues in the individual, we are losing. Of course, we should have a very, very accurate and sensitive equation, so that we are not creating a tyrant by relying on or focusing on the individual and ignoring the society, going through the family in the way, and vice versa, also considering the society only and focusing on it, assuming that the society which counts with regard to the country and with regard to the state. The society is not just a collectivity of individuals, so when we care about the society, we are caring about the individuals indirectly. Or vice versa, when we care about the individual, the society is just a collectivity of individuals. As a matter of fact, we should care about the individual as a basis, but let the individual feel that there is a society and there are rights of others, not only his own rights.
Does the Quran talk about the responsibilities of each, the individual, the family, and society? And what does the Quran say is the interrelationship between all three?
Well, it says that the individual is the basis, but it also, sometimes some verses, it addresses the individual. Some verses addresses the society. But in the same time, it is, both are very, very important and very essential. Unless the individual should feel the importance of the society, so that he may not be selfish or egocentrist. But in the same time, the society should not ignore the individual and should care about the individual when the individual needs the society and the help of the society. So the Quran is addressing both. The individual should be raised and his abilities should be nurtured intellectually, spiritually, morally, physically. Even physically, Quran, the traditions or the Islamic sources care about strength, about health, about not being sick, about avoiding any source of sickness, about caring about sanitary requirements. All this is very important, and a basis, an important basis historically and legally in Islam was cleanliness. And this was in the society of Arabia, which had no sufficient sources of water, was a big improvement that they should care about cleanliness, and Islam has made cleanliness a religious duty in everything. Before praying, you should wash. Before this, you should do this. After having intimate relation, you should have a bath. All these requirements, which seem very religious and very ritualistic sometimes, they introduced in a desert society and in a tribal society a revolution. A healthy revolution or a sanitary revolution with regard to caring about cleanliness. In addition to this, of course, physically, the Arabs in their way of life, riding horses, riding camels, running, the children, all this, caring about the health and the strength is a religious duty. And Islam considers this why this care about the effect of drugs, the effect of liquor on the human being, the human strength and the human mind and the human body is considered we are entrusted by God about the safety and the healthiness of the human body, including the mind. So the physical care is not just a common sense thing, it is a religious duty. And the prayers in themselves in Islam, it is not merely a reflection, it is not just supplication, saying something to God or communication, it is movement. Bowing and prostrating and standing up and so on. So the body is very important in Islam. In addition to this, the mind is very important. The caring about the child to speak up is very important, and it is what is called this sort of self-esteem and so on. It is one of the important Quranic advices. It is not just the practice. It is in the Quran that every child should be raised up to say the truth and to correct anything wrong according to his point of view. Of course, decently, politely, and so on. But even if the child sees anything wrong, if he sees his parents lying, for example, he should make up a remark about this in a polite way, because it is one of the contradictions that we are requiring from the child to say the truth. And whenever some person calls on the phone, we tell the child, tell him that I am not here. This is a contradiction which, of course, has a lot of problems. So saying the truth is very important, and raising the child morally and spiritually, trying to train him to pray whenever he becomes able to do this, fasting when he becomes able to do this, in addition to intellectually and psychologically and so on. It is a combination. And Islam cares about the totality and emphasizes or stresses the fact that the human being is a totality. His entire personality has to be dealt with, not only just his spirituality or morality or something like this. This is very important in marriage and in making a family, because also it is important in the choice of the spouse, not only the physical side, not only the personality in general should be convincing, and the personality is complex, and it has its sides, intellectual, spiritual, moral, many sides. So, and having the family is a very important component in the society. Unless we have strong families, good families, we cannot have a good and a strong society. And in the family, the individual begins to learn altruism, not to be selfish, not to because the child has brothers, has his parents. Also with regard to the spouse lived before marriage individually. Now there is a joint life. Every spouse should think about the family, not only about himself or herself, in addition to the individual. The individual should not be ignored, but within this sort of atmosphere.
I'm curious, were these values of the family much different in Arabic life before Islam?
Before Islam, the concentration was on the tribe and not the family. And the family was just a vehicle or a channel or a source to provide the tribe with many children and so on. So there was no care about the family as a family, the rights of the spouse, especially the wife, the relation of the children to the parents, the family as a nucleus, or as a nucleus family, as an entity by itself, hadn't a lot of care or concern before Islam. Islam, one of its effective reforms is not to talk about the tribe at all. No tribalism in Islam, is to care about the family, and to modernize or to make urbanize the society by making the family the nucleus of the society, not the tribe anymore.
How did that change Muslim society to what it is today? And is this a mark or a unique characteristic of Muslims?
Yes, I believe that the family is very, very important in the modern society until now, and it is, as it is said, like the Catholic family, for example. Religion is trying to give the family a religious flavor, and so it survives in spite of the fact that some sociological or economical factors might be against this, like moving from place to place, the immigration of the husband, and the wife could not go with him for some time. In spite of all these urban or sociological factors, still the family is very important, and it has its weight from early times because it has its religious meaning. That's why people care about having a Catholic marriage or an Islamic marriage, in spite of the fact that legally speaking, the marriage is there as soon as it is recorded and documented in the city.
There have been many societies and cultures who have pretty much relied on a patriarchal point of view or authoritarian head of a family. Does this strengthen or weaken societies?
I believe that the patriarchal society was, sociologically speaking, in a certain stage. when the man and his physical power, and I think this is the privilege that men, especially in all societies, have. Now we have female wrestlers and athletes and so on, but in that time, men were physically strong and they were responsible for the military responsibilities and the defending the place, including the family. Men had a certain place, in spite of the fact that there were societies in which women were the leaders. And even when men were the responsible people for earning the living for the family, women helped men in farms, in many responsibilities in earning a living. But we say in general about older times that they were patriarchal in a sense that the man was considered the main figure in the family and in the society. Talking about the army and the military defense, it was men. No women were there except serving the army or preparing the food or curing the wounded people or caring about them, something like this, but not fighting. With regard to political positions, most of them or all of them were in the hands of men. So it was patriarchal in a sense that, sociologically speaking, the woman was a specialist in raising up the children and caring about them. So it was said vaguely or roughly that the woman should care about raising the children and the man should care about earning the living. Since earning the living is very essential for the family, then the man becomes important in the family and in the society, especially if we add to this the administrative and the political responsibilities of men. Now, after science and technology give the women in general all power in defense, they can be pilots, they can be in the artillery, and they are in the back line, and they can fight in a certain way without requiring the physical strength, although they are trained in the army physically as well as other sides of training. But in our period, I think the society in general has gone beyond this patriarchal stage in its requirements, but in the mentality that is the problem. That now we have women fighting, we have women in the army, we have women in the administration, we have women in economics and in the market, but the mentality is still there that a woman can work whatever in whatever job, but she should have the responsibility of cooking the food, of caring about the children. And in this respect, this is unfair, because this means that she has the responsibilities of working outside, and then the responsibilities of the home, they were not reduced, except when technology helps in frozen food or something. But she is still responsible for the kitchen and responsible for raising the children. As a matter of fact, since early times, Islam cares about the fact of equality, that a man should help in home responsibilities, as well as woman is responsible in speaking up, in correcting anything wrong, in choosing the caliph, in making anything in the society as a citizen. In addition to this, for the home, the man should help as he can help.
All right, but structuring a family where everybody has their place, the man goes out and works, the woman stays at home and cooks and raises children, that fosters stability in a society, and that has been held as a value of stability, correct, in society?
Yes.
But as you say, technology has changed. Women have new roles. They're out working now. They're not at home. And that is what some claim is creating a great deal of instability in the family.
Yes, that's true, but we are trying to cope through nurseries, through kindergarten, through preschools. We are trying to provide the child with the home atmosphere in a certain way. Are we successful or not successful? And the point is, with regard to religion, that it is not a matter of principle, that a woman should stay at home and cannot work. The principle is that she can work, staying at home or doing the homework if it can be done in another way. If she voluntarily, in the end, likes to devote some time. When we had our own child, our own daughter, my wife was studying for her PhD, and she had a fellowship. So she left all this to get the pleasure of caring for the child and to observe the child in the growth and in the early days and so on. And she enjoyed this, and she said that I can study for my PhD 5 years later, 10 years later, but this childhood of my baby, I cannot find it later. So she left her study, but this is not an obligation, and she was not required to do this. But she voluntarily chose this. So if a woman voluntarily or the society find, according to statistics, that is better for the woman at least for 1 year, 2 years to have a leave of absence to care for the child until the child can go to the kindergarten or to the preschool or whatever. This is an arrangement of the society. What the religion cares about is that it is not a matter of principle that a woman should be deprived from learning or from working or from participating in social and political responsibilities because of the family. But if the family requires, and there is a sociological approach towards this, or another solution or another arrangement, this is left to the society.
All right, well, what exactly does the Quran say about the idea of balancing or finding equity within the family, within an individual family?
Well, the Quran says that all the family matters should be run with mutual consultation and consent. So consent only is not enough, because it may mean submission, and the consultation only is not enough, because it may end in non-agreement. Both should be there. And I believe that practicing this sort of sharing responsibilities as well as enjoying mutual rights is very important in the family as a bridge or as a channel to apply it in the society. We cannot have democracy in the society while the family is ruled in a sort of despotic way. If the children are not trained or educated or raised up to speak up, they cannot speak up in the society. That's why the family is very important with regard to the society, with regard to democracy. And one of the prayers of the believers or the Muslims, according to the Quran, oh God, let our family be a model, a good model for the society.
I would imagine that the Prophet Muhammad spoke highly of the family in his time.
Of course.
And what place did he put the family? What did he tell fellow Muslims?
He put the family as the provider of the coming generations. Mothers are highly regarded because, of course, at that time, mainly, especially for physical reasons, if the woman in her late period of pregnancy and the early raising of the child requires the mother to concentrate and to stay at home to care about this, about the baby, first as still in pregnancy and then after delivery. This gives the mother specifically an important role in raising children. And because of these physical and sociological circumstances, there was a strong emphasis on the role of women in the society and in the family. The family is very important, And that's why you find in every religion, whatever its general attitude in law, specific care about the laws of marriage, divorce, alimony, caring about children, custody, because the family is very important from the religious point of view, and the religious perspective does not consider the individual except going through the family and then through the society. This triple channel is there, and that's why the care of the individual, about the individual, is equal to the care about the family, because the family is really the first sociological development of the individual, to go out of his selfishness to altruism, to care about others, to have relations with the other. And this is a necessary and essential bridge to go to the society and to talk to him about his social or her social responsibility.
Is it true that Muslims see marriage and family as half their religion?
They see marriage as a half of their religion, as a and the religious bond, the marriage bond is not only a social arrangement, it is a religious arrangement. It is a sort of worshipping God. But this does not mean that all the legal requirements of justice should not be required or should not be observed, because one of the misunderstanding of the religious aspect of religion, that it may be a sort of despotic relation because it is dictated by God. No, it is a religious bond that everybody should care about it, but there are rights indicated for every spouse, for the children, for the parents, and also responsibilities. And so from the legal point of view, it should support justice, while the religious point of view should nurture this sort of spirituality and altruism and going beyond selfishness in considering the other partner or the children.
Islam talks a lot about freedom of choice. Let's get down to the aspects of marriage. Are marriages arranged in Islam, or can you choose another person to marry without the consent of your parents?
The consent of the parents is recommended, but it is not conditional. It is not a condition, but it is recommended. And I think this is normal, because even in our society, the parents, both of them, the spouses, may work together, and they need their in-laws to take care of the children. They may go to the in-laws for advice. So it is important not to isolate the parents from this sort of important occasion in the life of the girl or of the boy. But it is not conditional. It is recommended, it is needed. Arranged marriage was in a time in which communications were not there, localism was there, every area was concentrating on itself. It might be considered something not commendable that a family would go beyond the borders of the village or the town to have a girl from another place or a boy from another place. So within this sort of narrowness, arranged marriage was geographically dictated because of people living in certain borders. After urbanization and migration to cities, and then after having this sort of transportation and the communication and so on, I don't think that arranged marriage is not dominating, except in rural areas where this sort of narrow-mindedness is, or narrow life in there, narrow atmosphere and narrow horizon is there. But when Muslims moved from place to place and then know about others, I think the circle expands and expands and expands. And now you find in a country like in the United States, it is amazing now that a Muslim originally from Egypt marrying a girl from Bosnia, from Turkey, from the United States, Muslim or non-Muslim. There is a sort of this expansion according to the geographical situation and the globalism which we are going through.
Let's talk about the courtship. How much of Islamic law is applied there that then moves into the family once the marriage is consumed? Are Muslims harsher on fellow Muslims, women in particular, who engage in premarital sex?
I think it is a requirement according to Islamic law that the two spouses should know one another very well before the marriage. And it is clear in the traditions of the Prophet that this is basic for the continuation and the success of marriage. And this is, again, it's the spirit and the practice of the arranged marriage. The best thing is realized in the spontaneous acquaintance with other, that no segregation, and then a man can know a woman in work, in neighborhood, in any sort of normal mixing, probably not the artificial or the special circumstances now of what is called dating. Probably this, I am not talking about law, but the tradition or the way of life of Muslims is not used to this specific sort or direct sort except when the regulation develops and they are about to marry and they are serious about this. But dating just for the pleasure of different sexes meeting together without any commitment and without even any idea about, probably a person may be against marriage. He would not marry at all, but he will date all his life. This attitude, of course, is not accepted or is not welcome by any Muslim family. They like the relations to go and to grow spontaneously in life, and when there is a chance for really a closer relation and a plan for marriage or intention for marriage, they can meet together in any, what is prevented in Islam is that no one girl and one boy behind a closed door meet together. But they can meet in a garden, in a public place, in a cafeteria, in the college, in business work, without any restriction. The restriction is only what is called full privacy. This full privacy or seclusion behind closed door, it is not accepted in Islam.
Let's talk about what the Quran says are the responsibilities of a wife and a husband. And I'm not talking about you have the children, I go out and make the money. I'm talking about the very intimate things that make a good marriage, trust, compassion, those sort of things.
Well, it is very important. I think one of the things, especially in our society, having both spouses working, that they should talk to one another. So conversation is very essential, and the leisure time is very essential, because under the pressure of work, and both spouses come exhausted, and then they just relax to prepare themselves for another day of work. They lack communications, and this accumulation of silence would create a gap. So instead of the openness, which can solve many problems, any party who sees in the other party anything to talk about, to criticize, to anything, there is no chance. So this accumulation of problems is very serious, and in the end there is an explosion. So it is very important to have this sort of communication continuously. It is important to have leisure time to relax, whether there are children or not. It is very important to care about let me talk about it openly, the sexual satisfaction, that it should be there and it should not be ignored, and it is very important. And Islam is very, the traditions of the Prophet are very, very sometimes very open about this.
Well, you've opened a very interesting door there, because there are some religions in the world that say you should have sex for simple, you know, procreation. Don't let it go beyond that.
No.
Islam says achieve sexual satisfaction to
Yes,
its ultimate,
it is
and no
very-
limits, no limitations.
It is very important. The traditions go further, that you should not have sex as animals have sex, just suddenly like this. You should make yourself attractive, allow your wife to be attractive, to such an extent that when the man is away for a reason, earning living or fighting or whatever, before coming back he should let his spouse know in advance about his time. At that time, of course, there was no phone, no telegraph, nothing, no fax, nothing. So he has to come and stay at the mosque and let his wife know, so that when he comes, his wife is ready to receive him. Not as an object of sexual attraction, but as a human being. Not tired, not pressured in homework, not anything like this. And in the same time, the man, and this is important, is taught also to make himself acceptable and to start the relation with something which would smooth the relation, not just to have the biological thing and then it is finished. It is the psychology and even the practice, the techniques of these things, and that's why you find in some literary books, not the juristic, very few juristic books, but in the literary books, a lot of details about this sexual relation and how it can be developed and how it can fulfill its goals in a very, very polite and decent way, not in a pornographic way or trying to erase the sexuality. No. It is just in a very positive and constructive way, because in principle there is no sex out of the wedding clock. So this is a very strong thing. Raising sex then was under this label, that you are developing sexuality among spouses, not for the attraction of any boy with any girl, but under this umbrella. So you find a lot of literature in the Arabic heritage, and I am sure that it is also in Persian literature, in Turkish literature.
All right, a Muslim woman discovers her husband has been unfaithful. Does she forgive him? Take him back?
Of course, there should be here education, and not left to the momentary reaction. Definitely any wife, when she realized that the man has made a mistake, or vice versa, this causes anger, causes reaction, causes something. But there should be education how to handle this and to go beyond the momentary reaction.
What does the Quran say?
It says that you should go and try to talk to your wife when you find. First of all, there should be precautionary arrangements, that a woman outside her home should have modest clothes. Any relation or any contact between a man and woman in work, in the market, in any place, should be within certain procedure, with mutual respect. No intimate relations without marriage. So in all this procedure, there is a sort of precautionary arrangement, so that when something like this happens, it should be an exception. But if you open all the doors for a boy and a girl to do anything, and then you complain that suddenly you find that the wife is not faithful, or the girl has been involved in certain relations, according to the Islamic logic, this should be expected. And that's why sometimes in the interfaith or in the social dialogues or something like this, talking about pregnancy of teenagers, children, raising children, all this. We care about this and we participate as possible, but we do not share the logic. We think that there is something missing from the beginning, that you allow sexual freedom and open all the doors towards it, and when the results, which can be expected, as a matter of fact they are inevitable, happen, then you complain and you say, how can I deal with this? So from the beginning, the precautionary attitude in Islam is that any relation with a man and a woman who are not in wedlock should be controlled by modesty in dress, certain naturality or normality in this relation, in an open place, not in a closed place, and sex is only in wedlock. So if something happened after this, it had to be handled in a way or another, should allow the person to repent and to, but the instant or the momentary thing, of course, which is happening in many societies because of lack of education in general and the religious education specifically, is that it is explosion.
All right. Talking about sexual freedom, polygamy was practiced all through the world. My question is, was polygamy practiced before Islam, after Islam? Where is its place, and how, I guess the real question is, did it interfere with the whole idea of family and structure?
Well, polygamy was practiced in Arabia before Islam in a wider sense, because there was no limit for the number of wives, because as I said, the tribe was the basis. So any sexual relation, any family relation which brings children to the tribe and make the tribe stronger are accepted. What Islam did is to restrict polygamy to a certain number and to make it conditional, that when there are many widows, when there are many orphans, so that statistically speaking there are many girls for, or many women for a smaller number of men. Then this big number or this range of people who, of women who would not find men, either you allow them sex without restrictions, without limits, or you allow them to be nuns, or there should be a solution for these people. So in this exceptional case, we are always thinking that the exceptional case is for the man. If the man is rich and if the man is healthy and wants more than one wife, then, and he can be just and fair indeed. First, this is impossible to be just and fair with more than one wife. And then the relations between the wives, and then the relations between the half-brothers. You cannot have a society of such a thing. But it happened when there were certain circumstances. It continued after this, and it was abused. But the principle, as in the Quran, it is connected with orphans, with widows, with people who are victims of a war. And because Islam in the beginning faced oppression and faced a lot of war, many women had no men to marry. So it is something, and I think among educated classes, among educated people, you can never find polygamy now. So this proves that it's a matter of social development. And also it is a matter of statistics. When you have men 50-50 as biologically said, there is a possibility of having a girl or a boy, then it is 50-50, there is no problem. The problem when this equation is shaken for any reason, sometimes you may find women more, sometimes you may find men more, then in this case there is a sort of problem. But the general principle, one man for one woman for one man, have all the children, brothers and sisters, siblings, not half brother, half sister, have all this is a sort of exception which will reverse or will shake the balance of justice in the society.
All right, back to monogamy. How important is children in the Muslim family? What's their place?
Their place is very important because raising the children is requires knowledge and art, and requires mind and emotion. And Islam always tries to nurture both, that this is a responsibility and you cannot deal with it through ignorance. So, and there is a whole chapter in the Quran, an advice of a wise man to his son. And this was considered the model for education and what are the responsibilities of a parent towards his son with regard to the intellectual growth, with regard to the physical growth, with regard to spiritual and moral growth, with regard to the role of the child in the family and the role of the child at school or in the society. It is very, very important. And there is an incident which is very, very significant and informative. Once Caliph Omar, who was known that he was physically tall and big in his body, and in the same time he was very, very respectable among the people, sometimes feared by people for his personality. And it was his custom to go through the streets and so on to see the people. So while he was going, and it was said for being tall that when he is walking, some people may think that he is riding a horse because he was very tall. So I am trying to give a picture about him to imagine his impact or his influence on children. Once he was going through a street, through streets and so on, making a sort of patrolling in his time, and he found some children playing in the street. There were no clubs, the homes were very, very small, so the only playground was in the street in Arabia in that time. So they were playing, and when they saw him, of course he was known, especially in the capital, so they ran away. In Medina, they ran away, except one. So he brought this person and asked him, why didn't you run like your friends? He said, I didn't do anything wrong so that I would fear you, and the street can accommodate me and you. It is not narrow, and you are a just person. I don't think that you are a tyrant. So I didn't do anything wrong, and you are not supposed to do anything harm to me, and the street can accommodate both of you. So he likes the answer, and he said this child would have a future. And that's what happened. He became a distinguished person in the history of Islam.
You say there's a book devoted to a wise man giving his son advice. What about the daughter? Are daughters considered?
It is both. Daughter is just equal, and there are many traditions in Islam saying that men and women are equals. Boys and girls are equal, and nobody cares about any one of them rather than more than caring about the other. As a matter of fact, traditionally speaking, and historically speaking, the care which was given to women or to girls in a family, especially in rural areas, is more, because they think that the boy can care about himself. This is the common idea. But the girl is, probably you can now, the feminist may say this is an implication that the girl is the weaker part. But this was not the idea. The idea is that the girl needs a special care, whatever the motive may be. So boys and girls in the history of Islam, as we shall elaborate on this in the future, they were in every job, in every function, and this cannot happen unless they were raised up equally. we find them talking to caliphs, talking to leaders, sometimes fighting for something that they believe in, fighting against rulers. They did marvelous things, and as a matter of fact, to be fair, even the Arab women before Islam, in spite of the fact that tribalism was there and they care about children and so on, but the Arab woman, relatively speaking, with regard to the whole world, had some relative rights and relative respectability in the Arab society before Islam.
Does the Quran tell parents specifically how to raise
Yes,
their children?
they tell them specifically to raise them to say the truth and speak up, as it is said in the Quran or in Islam, this term, enjoining the doing of what is right and forbidding the doing of what is wrong. So teach your children to pray and to know the one God and to be nice with their parents. This is number 2, to be kind to their parents, and then it is connected with these 2, dealing with God or communicating with God and dealing with the parents, to speak up and correct anything wrong.
So the Quran talks to the parents and the children.
Yes.
And there is a sort of reciprocal relationship there.
Of course, as a matter of fact, children in the Muslim education, traditional education, they have to memorize the Quran at school, knowing through the Quran all their rights and all their responsibilities and so on.
All right, well, what does the Quran then teach both the children and the parents about cohesiveness in the family? Is there a message there?
Yes, the message is that both are responsible. The children are responsible for being kind and nice to their parents, especially in their old age, because of all what their parents have done to them. And the parents are responsible for raising up the children morally, spiritually, physically, intellectually, educating them, allowing them to meet educators.
A simultaneous development.
Yes, simultaneous, because in any time the parent may need the help of the child. And this was marvelous. Sometimes the child, as we see now, the child may call the police, just dial 911 when the child saw his mother fainting or something. It is very, very important to develop this sort of responsibility in the child since he is a child.
What about equal rights among parents as to the responsibilities for each of the children? Does the Quran give the father more rights than the mother, vice versa, or the same?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, in case of divorce, which is something hated by Islam, in spite of the fact that, well, Islam allows divorce, divorce is not encouraged at all by Islam, but if it happens, the custody, according to many jurists, is given to the better parent for the child, whether he is the woman, who is the mother, she is the mother, or he is the father, without any discrimination. Suppose that you have a father who is alcoholic, who is a drug user, who is so and so, who is in prison, then you give it to the mother. There is no discrimination at all.
Does the father or the mother take care of the spiritual responsibilities, the ethical instruction of the child?
Both. And the mother is very responsible because she is closer to the child from the beginning. For example, the father is supposed to be outside for any reason, but the mother is closer, especially through the early years of the baby and the child. So she is very important for the child, but both are responsible.
And the role of the mosque and school?
Of course, it is very important so that the child would not know that his family is alienated from other, or something unique or strange. It is important to see the community, to see that there are others doing the same thing. And the mosque is very important in this respect and in educating the children, because the mosque can give weekend school for the children so that it can make up for their religious and spiritual development.
And back to the concept of the extended family. We have uncles, we have aunts, we have cousins.
Of course, and
what role do they play in relationship to the parents?
They are very important, and they visit, and they are visited, and the children get used to them and to their cousins, the children of the uncles, of the aunts, play with them. They live in this sort of extended family with other children.
Well, let's talk more about divorce, because that is, well, in American society, I think the statistic is still half. We're still near 50%, half of everybody who gets married in the United States. And I'm not sure if that is among Muslims, probably not. But there's divorce, and a lot of divorce. The Muslim or Islamic perspective on divorce?
Unfortunately, the Islamic perspective, of course, it is trying to restrict and to narrow divorce as possible. It allows it as the last resort when there is no way for any sort of agreement, because we should not ignore that marriage is a bond between two independent individuals who were raised differently. They may be compatible, they may not be compatible, they may realize that they are compatible in the engagement period, but when they live under one ceiling, they may realize that this is impossible. So it should be allowed, but it should not be encouraged. And this is the stand of Islam. But suffering now, yes, even the Muslim families are suffering, and this may be, it is not related to Islam, it is related to our social development and our situation.
So religion and culture is very, very important with the Islamic life as a stability factor, and taken together and used properly and balanced, as you say. People can live happy lives, raise their children, and find fulfillment.
Of course, it will add to the depth of the relations between the spouses, between the parents and the children. There will be always this sort of depth and warmth in relations, not just doing the responsibility or something, but feeling the pleasure of doing this and feeling the pleasure of satisfying the requirements of religion.
What is zakat?
Zakat is the welfare dues which are paid by the individual for those who are in need, the disabled, the elderly, the unemployed, any person who is in need. And so the able people, or the people who have enough and a minimum of income, they pay a certain percentage, so that those who cannot earn anything or have certain limitations in earning can make benefit of this.
And here then is the Muslim family extending who it is into the wider community and helping others.
Of course. First of all, if anyone in the extended family is in need, this zakat is given to him, or he is one of the people who deserves this zakat. More than this, it goes to other families in the community, in the local community. And if it cannot go, if there are no families who are in need within the community or within the neighborhood, it can go to other places. As a matter of fact, the jurists noticed that it should be devoted first, at the first place, to the direct neighborhood, so that every area should have self-sufficiency. And if the self-sufficiency is there, then it can go beyond this to other communities.
Well, you've spoken during the hour about many values of the family that even non-Muslims would listen to and say, of course, it makes sense, it's a message from God, this is the way we should operate. But here in America, as we see in the press, as we see in movies, almost encouraged by movies, there isn't a great emphasis on the family as a structure. Individuals, in fact, are told to go it alone, forget about the other guy. And of course, back to families where there is sort of a destructure of families. There's not that cohesiveness or focal point. Very difficult for Muslim families to exist in. But how do they cope?
They try, of course, to have this difficult equation, while openness to the society, trying to preserve their values within themselves. And the children, I think the logic of the reality, of the factual life, that these broken children led to finding an alternative, because the family is very important to the human psychology. The broken families led to trying to find alternatives, and the alternatives were in gangs, in violence, in cults, trying to find some other people that care about the person, some other power and the ability to have self-esteem. I believe that families are very important, and this is known now by children. The Muslim children go to school, find others in gangs or violence, although they try to go to good schools or something, but this epidemic can happen in any place. They watch it on the TV. So there is a sort of logic of the life itself that this is not the right way. And I think many Americans, not only the Muslims, and many American children, not only the Muslims, began to realize that something is missing. Something is going wrong in the American ideals of individualism, of independence, of so and so, of freedom. Something is exaggerated, is going beyond the borders. So I believe that convincing them about that or talking to them about that is not difficult with regard to what they watch and to what they say. So we are trying to cope in this way.
With capitalism, however, being elevated almost to icon status, I mean, the NASDAQ, investments, which are reaching enormous priorities in people's lives. Does capitalism undermine the whole idea of the Islam view of family and individual in society?
Capitalism is trying now to combine the care for the individual enterprise with some care about the social welfare, especially with regard to Democrats and socialist parties in the democratic countries. But capitalism in its extreme, of course, it was caring only about the individual, not about the society. And its idea is that let every strong individual enter the race and compete with others. If he or she cannot enter the race, then he does not deserve any special care. And I should not encourage him or her by giving any assistance from the state. This has been proved to be a false supposition, because there are people who are deprived from entering the race because of certain situation or certain circumstances made by the society or by the state or by others. And unless you give them special care, you cannot bring a cripple and a healthy person and say them go in a race. You should try to cure the crippled person first on your responsibility, because he does not make himself crippled. Even if he is born in this way, you should do something for him to qualify him or her to enter the race and to be equal. So I think the exaggerated view of capitalism in concentrating on the individual and ignoring the society is equally evil to the same Marxist opinion that let us care about the society and the individual would be an outcome of the society. If the society is strong, then the individual would be strong. Both are wrong, and we should care about the individual and the society as something interdependent and interacting, and the family in between.
Professor, what do you see as long-term or even short-term risks of society today, to the society?
There is two things. One is general, and the second is specific with regard to the family. In general, of course, isolating the human being from the divine guidance and letting him go in different ways and deviated from this source of wisdom, of course, makes him going here and there and puzzled and perplexed and so on, and sometimes mistakes and what is serious than mistakes may happen. So this is general. The second thing is the care about the family. Unless we have strong families and the care about the family as a laboratory for the society, a preparation for the society, the nucleus society, in which a person knows how to deal with others, how to be unselfish, how to consult or to be democratic and to have a conversation and to decide by mutual agreement. So the care for the family is very important and very essential, and I think it is the key in our present situation.
But as I say here in America, you know, the money god is the one people kneel and worship to. It's almost a value-neutral society in America today. Can that be reversed?
I don't want it to be reversed. Just to be put in perspective, money is important, and this life is important, and this world life is important. And in Islam, there is this world this life in this world will bring the reward or the punishment in the hereafter. So there is no contradiction. We in Islam, working hard and earning money is a sort of worshipping God. So we should work hard, we should get money to spend it wisely. The point is how to earn money wisely, and of course legally and fairly, and spend it wisely and fairly. If we concentrate on the individual, then we earn it with, in any way. Whatever, let us say, well, there is a law, there are policemen, whatever. You can then, to be logic with yourself, if you can escape all these responsibilities and earn money, you should earn money. Right. And spending money also. You can spend just on your luxuries and leave others. So we should have money in perspective. Yes, we need money. We need work in this world. Nothing against having money, but how to earn it and how to spend it.
Let's end this hour by asking you your opinion on bringing all this into balance. How do Muslims as well as non-Muslims achieve that?
Well, I believe that it starts from the community. If we concentrate on the community, how in the neighborhood or in a certain locality, and this is the responsibility of the church or the synagogue or the mosque, how we care about the families in the community, how we care about the interrelation between families, and then we go from the community to another community, the relations of communities within our neighborhoods, within the city. And in this way, we can go from state to state, from country to country, to the whole world.
Thank you, Professor. We enjoyed the time.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure. Very interesting discussion.
And thank you. You've been watching Islam in Contemporary Life, Conversations with Professor Dr. Fathi Osman.